hiding in front of a podium and saying, yeah, here I am, but I'll only testify publicly.
Maria, all of Hunter Biden's income has originated from companies overseas. Why can't he do anything in America? And what services is he doing to earn this income, given the fact that he's got such a debilitating crack habit that he had to have all his teeth replaced? For them to say no evidence is so unbelievably ridiculous. It's right in your face. Why on earth would payments originate in Europe, bounce to 3 or 4 different countries, come to the U.S., go back to Europe, then come to the U.S. and get dispersed to 10 different members of the Biden family?
Yeah, it's a great point.
What favors are being exchanged here?
And I keep asking, what does Beijing have on Joe Biden? Jump in here.
Yeah, hey, Troy. As far as I know, there's no such thing as a soft landing. And if we have one now, it will literally be the first time ever where we were able to crush inflation without having a recession. And that doesn't mean that if the Fed starts cutting now and we don't have a recession, that, the world's going to go awry. But you run the real risk of inflation staying structurally higher, if not reaccelerating like the last time we went through an inflation supercycle. What are your thoughts in terms of the Fed? If they cut too early, do you think this is cutting too late? What are your thoughts about that going forward?
Yeah, and let me just point out the Wall Street Journal op-ed this morning, Troy, before you answer, because it's a great piece in the Journal this morning about a soft landing being the crowded trade of the moment. That's what's the consensus. They say, beware the most crowded trade on Wall Street, next year's soft landing, because this is basically what everybody believes now, that the Fed is going to be able to engineer it.
Yeah, well, so 2 things. One, oftentimes what happens in markets, Maria, is you have powerful technical forces of rebalancing and systematic trend following, positioning, and big short positions being closed out like we had in the bond market. And then the narrative emerges from that we're going to have this magical soft landing. To Mike's point, when you think about inflation, it's very difficult for the Fed to break inflation without having at least a mild recession. And obviously in a mild recessionary environment, you're not going to have 10 to 12% earnings growth next year, which markets are basically pricing in, and you're going to have earnings declines.
Maria, this White House is...
By the way, we're looking at Melania Trump's Christmas decorations and the show that she put on back in 2017. And we want to compare it to what Jill Biden put on with this group who wants to defund the police. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Yeah, this White House is hell-bent on destroying Americans that are not part of the ruling class, part of the elite. And when you, although she is from the cultural center of Delaware, when you put these types of people in the White House, you're just spitting in the face of average Americans. Because, look, it's not her and her friends and those in charge that this defund the police movement and don't put anybody in jail is affecting. It's those with the least. It's all, and like what is not the greatest? I mean, the greatest time of the year is Christmas, and every week we all come together and we love these traditional things like the massive tree right outside here. I mean, this is really a spectacular time of year, but you've got to inject your woke nonsense in the middle of it as a further kick in the you-know-what to the average working stiff.
All right, we will leave it there, and we will come back to this if Trump weren't running. So he basically told us, said it out loud, that he's not running to take the country to the next level. He's not running because he actually wants to make a difference for American citizens. He's running because he wants to stop Trump. And I'm wondering if this is going to be the catalyst that the Democrats need to throw Joe overboard. According to a new Bloomberg Morning Consult poll, former President Donald Trump is leading President Biden in 7 key swing states. Young voters are even leaving Biden behind over the handling of the student loan forgiveness, despite him canceling $132 billion so far. Mike, he's still trying to push through, he claims, to forgive student debt, even though the Supreme Court ruled against it.
So, Maria, I believe Joe Biden will be the candidate because across the Rust Belt and the swing states, he is 5 to 10 points better against Trump than, say, Gavin Newsom, Kamala Harris, or Mayor Pete. So the problem with the Democrats is they have no alternative. And you got to remember, there's a lot of people in the Midwest that don't pay close attention to politics, that remember Joe being Union Joe most of his career. That's why they got everyone to drop out after the Iowa caucuses in 2020 and inserted Joe as a candidate, because out of all of their available bench, he polls the best and he is the most successful amongst those states. So I don't know that he'll drop out, but Trump's in the lead here, and he's beginning to get a commanding lead. And all the factors that have led to it, the inflation, the quality of life, the crime, the border, the insanity overseas with not only Ukraine but Israel. None of these problems existed under a Trump administration, and people can remember how their life was 4 years ago. It's still fresh in their minds, and in my opinion, all of these problems and all the factors that have put Trump in the lead now are going to get better for Trump and worse for Joe Biden over the next year. So unless something dramatic changes for Trump or for Joe Biden, I can't see the margins closing on this.
Yeah, I know. But, Mike, this political story doesn't mention those policies at all. OK, they're not mentioning the border, the crime, the inflation, the massive misplaced foreign policy, the botched Afghanistan withdrawal, China's aggression and no response whatsoever. They're not mentioning any of that. They're just mentioning, I could see it in his eyes. He can't take Hunter being under pressure like this. I don't know what it's going to do to him. I mean, they're pulling at our heartstrings to make it look. They're just mentioning, I could see it in his eyes. He can't take Hunter being under pressure like this. I don't know what it's going to do to him. I mean, they're pulling at our heartstrings to make it look like, you know, Joe Biden is so upset by the legal issues around his son.
Maria, look, he should be, because they've lived with no accountability for decades. Remember, the FBI had Hunter's laptop, verified it was true in 2019. And we're hearing from the whistleblowers about all the tax charges they've skipped out. No one will answer on how he never had to register as a foreign lobbying agent.
That's right.
In addition to all the other dozens of crimes that exist on that laptop that they've been able to get away with for who knows how long. And the fact that they might face a shred of accountability is got to be earth-shattering for them.
Yes, but Joe, again, this. Welcome back. It is time for the Word on Wall Street. Top investors watching your money. Joining me right now is former Gartman letter editor Dennis Gartman and Mike Lee with us this morning. Dennis, thanks for joining the conversation. We appreciate your time. Look at this market this morning. Another rally. Are you surprised that it has taken this long to have these 11 rate hikes from the Fed actually have an impact on the macro story more severely? I mean, we've been told that it takes 18 months for higher rates to actually take an impact. So we could actually be moving into the next 6 months of 2024 as perhaps the worst part of this. But you just don't see it yet. We still see good numbers. Dennis.
It surprises me, yes, with lags. The impact of the Fed's tightening monetary policy should have had an effect already. We are now 18 months, 19 months, 20 months into the policies of the Fed raising the overnight Fed funds rate. I still think it shall be a long period of time before the Fed begins the process of easing monetary policy.
It has fallen below 7% for the first time since August. We've got a big week of housing data next week. I want to get ahead of it. The NAHB Housing Market Index out on Monday. Building permits, housing starts out on Tuesday. Existing home sales out on Wednesday. Mike, what's your take on housing right now after we've seen people walk away from mortgages because rates went all the way up to 8%, close to 8%, and, of course, have been coming down since?
Yeah, Maria, we're in a bit of a conundrum here in the housing market. So first, for everyone watching at home, if you want to see where the 30-year mortgage is going to go, watch this 10-year Treasury very closely. The 30-year mortgage does not move in lockstep with that 10-year Treasury, but it moves pretty closely, and that's a lot better indicator of where mortgage rates are going to go. So if this 10-year continues on its rally, so the duration, the bet that where not only is the economy slowing, but the Fed is going to cut interest rates, that 10-year Treasury will continue to fall, and so will 30-year mortgage rates. The spread between the 10-year mortgage and the 10-year Treasury and the mortgage is higher, and I think that's some issues in the bank funding market, particularly with the deposit flight post-Silicon Valley Bank, which maybe we'll see it reverse itself. I'm not sure, but until this flows through, I think the housing market is in a lot of trouble. It doesn't mean the prices are going to fall out because of the lack of supply, but the lack of transactions, the very little inventory available on the market is good for home prices, but it's bad for the housing market and the general economy. I mean, the more homes that are getting turned over and sales, the more homes being built, it creates a multiplier effect from people upgrading their home, building new homes that we're not going to see until interest rates come down substantially. Because what a lot of people don't think about is most of these home builders need to lever up to build homes. And so when their rates are substantially higher than the 5-year, 10-year Treasury, as well as the 30-year mortgage rate, so if you're a developer and you're borrowing at 15% or higher, it's very hard to make money, especially with wages where they are. So I don't see good things in the housing market until you can get a 5 number on that 30-year mortgage and you get a flood of inventory coming out on the market at the same time.
So would you sell into this rally then going into 2024, Mike?
So I believe the number was 40% of the S&P 500 is above their 200-day moving average. Okay, that's only happened twice. I believe it was October or June of 2003 and or June of 2020 and October of 2003, which were both precursors of massive bull markets to come. And so I agree with Dennis in that the fundamentals aren't necessarily supporting the price action, but you know, the same way you don't want to get in front of a falling knife, you don't want to stand in front of a raging bull. So I'm not selling yet until we see a reversal of this. You never sell into new highs. There's a tremendous amount of buying going on in the stock market. So I think Santa's given us a Christmas rally, and it's not going to stop anytime soon.
Wow. All right. Amazing. What a market. Well, they say that the market climbs a wall of worry, right? I mean, that's there's that. Dennis, great to see you. Thanks for weighing in. Dennis Gartman, we will see you soon. Mike, you're with us all morning, and we're grateful. Quick break, and then the crisis at the southern. Michael, from the border sources, that the cartels were at one point shooting at our Border Patrol agents, shooting across the Rio Grande.
Maria, this is an unbelievable mess. This is, in my opinion, this is part of the controlled destruction of America by the left. We have no idea how many people we've let in our country. We think it's somewhere in the 8 to 9 million range, which has been a new Chicago every single year Joe Biden has been in office. But the violence is just beginning. The number of Chinese nationals and who knows who's come over. I mean, hundreds of people on the terrorist watch list have been apprehended at the border. What about those that are involved in the getaways? This is a security nightmare waiting to happen, and it's intentional. These cartels are terrorist organizations and should be labeled as such, so you can really attack their funding and go after all the politicians on both sides of the border that have contributed to this. But where do we go from here? We are in a logistical nightmare that is going to take years to unwind, and every day it's getting worse.
And it's unbelievable, but the Biden administration still will not budge. I mean, the Republicans are digging in, saying, we're not going to agree to any aid for Ukraine until you start focusing and acknowledging this wide open border and the impact to national security. And so far, crickets.
Maria, this border policy is an impeachable offense. Right? And we're focused on all the influence peddling through Hunter. This is an impeachable offense. They are intentionally not enforcing our policies. The majority of these asylum seekers, like 95 to 99% of them, are claiming they're here for a better life, which is completely understandable. But economic reasons are not a rationale for asylum in America. It's not part of the law. You know this up front. The Trump administration had several tools to slow this flow slowdown that the Biden administration
Yes.
has willfully ignored. And so you got to understand all these problems are the feature, not the bug. This is intentional, and there's no other way to look at it at this point.
All right, let's slip in a short break. When we come back, the White House is pushing back on reports that Jake